What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 284th episode of the Xbox Drive. I'm one of your hosts, the man on the moose, Ryan Turford, and I'm joined for the very first time on this show, not on every other shows, because Garret and I have done other shows before, but the doctor is in the house. Mr. Garret Bland, how's it going, Garret?
Hey, I'm doing good. This is a RPG Cave takeover of the Xbox Drive. We're gonna talk all about the RPGs on Xbox. The Lost Odysseys and the Blue Dragons. The ones in the 360 days that were cool. And now,
whoa! Don't forget about Resonance of Fate, Garret.
Of course, I cannot forget the one game that I tend to forget, and that is Resonance of Fate.
Or Enchanted Arms. Don't forget about Enchanted Arms, or...
I think you're making stuff up right now. That one, I don't know. You could fool me with that one.
Just go Google it. Enchanted Arms is actually a real game. That's actually, believe it or not, Enchanted Arms is a From Software game, and it's a turn-based RPG on 360. And then Resonance of Fate is actually made by the Star Ocean team, Tri-Ace, over at Square Enix. And that even got a HD port on PlayStation 4 as well. So there you go.
What an interesting time that was. The time that Microsoft really wanted to grab the JRPG Japanese audience. That was seriously something. Now, it's getting better. I think it's getting better. It's just, they understand they can't just keep things exclusive to Xbox with these games.
Of course not. Also, I want to welcome on in Brad Moore, of course, says, "Hey guys, first time making the live show." Woo! Absolutely. Brad, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. Yeah, we're for audio listeners who might not understand, we are doing the show on an odd day because we don't usually do the show on Wednesdays, first of all. We usually don't do the show at 11 o'clock at night Eastern Daylight Time, but because of some scheduling stuff that we've got going on this week, because we've got, believe it or not, actually a pretty packed week on Carpool Gaming this week. And because Garrett's never been on Xbox Drive before, because I'm on my crusade to basically bring in everyone, both from Carpool Gaming and then also some people from outside Carpool Gaming that have never been on Xbox Drive before. And Garrett's never been on the show before. So I thought this would be fun to bring Garret in and then do kind of like an RPG Cave crossover. Although I will promise y'all that, and I know this specifically is for Donnie Reese, I have to preface this ahead of time. We're not just going to talk about RPGs the whole time. I actually have topics that are not RPG related that we're going to talk about. But also, Garret, most people don't know because they know you obviously from Nintendo Shack, from being a Nintendo person, but you play a lot of games on PC and also on Xbox.
Yeah, dude. Actually, Xbox has been my legacy console for sure. Nintendo was there, of course, from the beginning with SNES, but then the next, AAA, Call of Duty type of era, middle school, high school, day one, Xbox 360 in 2005. I was there at Best Buy since 2 a.m. to get my 360. And then ever since, I've always been more, familiar with the Xbox community, the ecosystem. I had to go to PlayStation 4, because of the Xbox One, PlayStation 4 fiasco. But I've always been, my love towards Xbox is really big. And of course, with Game Pass and everything, I just can't deny that price. So yeah, I'm full in to the Xbox ecosystem.
Yeah, and absolutely. And one thing that we've been saying for a while now, especially since I got my new PC that's over here that I always like to touch during the show, of course, because it's very shiny, is that this is also kind of our unofficial PC podcast because we don't actually have a PC podcast. And I know you play a ton of Steam Deck, Garret, so that also kind of counts as well.
That's true. And I do have a laptop that plays PC games okay. But yeah, my Steam Deck is actually my playtime right before work. I wake up a little earlier just to get some game time in, and Steam Deck really hits out of the park, playing all types of Steam games whenever I feel like it. So it's awesome.
Absolutely. All right. Well, anyways, let's clean the garage a little bit. So, Jesus Christ. So, folks, if you want to support the show, there's a number of awesome ways to do that. If you're watching the live stream right meow over at youtube.com/carpoolgaming, or if you're watching the video on demand later, don't forget to like the video, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already, and then ding, ding, ding ring that notification bell to be notified whenever we go live with new videos, or whenever we go live with a live stream like this one. Or also let us know in the comments below whether you're playing Resident Evil 4, or if you played the Diablo 4 beta, what you thought about it, or what you think about Duck Hunt on NES, because that's something we're going to talk about later. Any of the things that we talk about today, of course, let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Also, if you're listening on audio feeds, don't forget to subscribe to us there if you haven't already, and also rate us if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps get the show discovered by people that are not on there. We got to get up the Xbox charts, Garrett, because I don't know if you knew this, but on Spotify, if you search in a incognito window with the search term Xbox, it will show you what a new user to, Spotify will actually pop up, like what order things will pop up in, but by searching just the term Xbox or Xbox podcast on Spotify. And currently the Xbox Drive was up there for a while, but we've fallen down a little bit on those charts. We're not like the PlayStation Drive, who's literally on the first page. They're like number 5 on there somehow. So obviously, rating us on Spotify totally helps us. It helps the algorithm, helps people jump into the car with us. And then of course, last but not least, if you want this audio a little bit early, or you want some exclusive content, because we've got some pretty cool exclusive content coming up, you can head on over to our Patreon, patreon.com/carpoolgaming, throw a little tip in the little tip jar, and out comes content. Well, without further ado, Garrett, it is time to grab our 8-tracks, pop them in. It is time for the playlist. I almost said it's time to read from the sacred text. That's just how ingrained the RPG Cave is in my brain right now. So Garrett, as the guest on the show, I got to ask you first, what did you play this week, my friend?
What did I play this week? Dude, I've been playing, of course, that weekend, that Diablo 4 open beta weekend. I have to, speak a little bit more on that. I'm totally in it. It's so addicting. I love the gameplay of Diablo. I like what they're doing different compared to Diablo 3. When I think it's been a few years since I played Diablo 3, but I remember it being more, I don't know, like cartoonish, I guess you can say, more lighter hearted. It felt like WoW-ish in a Diablo setting, whereas this is dark, this is depressing, and I just love the theme around it. But it has that Diablo sauce that everyone loves. So really loving it, really digging it.
Yeah, especially like the art style. Sorry to interrupt you, but the art style itself, more familiar with what Diablo 2's art style was. Like it's very much like you're walking around, there's just like a trail of blood just speared across the floor, and like when you go into the dungeons, like they're like dark and dreary and stuff like that. Like it's not just on a visual standpoint, but also from a gameplay standpoint. They really tried to take the best parts of Diablo 3 and the best parts of Diablo 2, and then just like stick them together in like some weird peanut butter and jelly kind of sandwich. And I actually think that they kind of nailed it with the formula, to your point, Garrett. I actually think like the gameplay loop was super fun, because like last weekend with the beta, I talked about it a little bit with Matt on last week's show. I played 25 hours last weekend of the beta, and then I played again this weekend for another 15 or so. So I'm kind of with you. I'm kind of just all in it on this game at this point as well.
It's a good one for sure. So I did play some on Xbox, and then I was like, you know what, I'm gonna give this old Steam Deck a try. I know it'll have some workarounds, and I'll just be very brief on it. You can download Blizzard. It'll take a little finagling, but you can download Blizzard, and you can add it as a non-Steam game, so you can run it on Steam OS. You have to do a little bit more finagling to install Diablo in order to get the right layer package and compatibility, and you have to actually go into the BIOS and increase your VRAM. So after all of that, yes, you can play Diablo 4 on Steam Deck just fine. After you mess with the configurations, it works good. It works very, very well. And it actually runs really nice, like a crisp 40 frames if you want, for a good 3-hour gameplay. If you want to increase the frame rate, you can. And it's really nice on PC. And I know you probably play on PC too. I only needed to install the low asset version of Diablo 4. I didn't need to do the full game. So it was actually 40 gigabytes on my Steam Deck.
That's really nice.
The 80 gigabytes. So played a lot on my Steam Deck. I also play on Xbox, which is, Let me tell you, the low assets on Steam Deck compared to like a PC or Xbox, it is noticeably different.
Yeah.
A lot more detail. Super cool, very atmospheric. I did play Druid,
Oh,
for
nice.
my playthrough. Yeah. So I really like the build of it. It has like I did a mix of bear and electric
Okay.
attacks going on, but I can easily tell like I could totally go a different path if I wanted to. You can make multiple of builds of the same character, which I found very intriguing
Mm-hmm.
for this game. So yeah,
Yeah, I did a
very
lot
much.
of experimenting on my druid as well because I played all 5 character classes because I wanted to try all of
Mhm.
them out at least a little bit. And druid, I started off kind of doing what you did, where I was like half and half with stuff, but I ended up just going full werewolf build instead because I just enjoyed it so much.
Nice. Yeah.
Like especially too because I ended up getting a legendary that then gave the summon wolf companions that you get later on to become summon werewolf companions. So it's like me and my
Oh
troop
my
of werewolves
goodness.
just running around, just wrecking stuff. Oh my god, it was so fun. But also, I just have to throw it out there. God, the necromancer is broken at this point.
Oh,
They
the
really need
necromancer's pretty broken.
they really need to do
That's
some stat
funny.
tuning because holy moly, the necromancer was so powerful. You just rip through everything like it's like nobody's
Okay.
business. Regardless of what stat build you use, it's kind of like the necromancer is very overpowered at the moment versus the other classes. Where I almost feel like after playing all 5 classes, I think the druid and the barbarian are actually fairly weak compared to the other classes.
Mm.
And it was definitely tougher to tackle some of the harder content with those classes
Mhm.
versus the rogue with all of the different options you have to stay at range and keep the enemies at bay, to the sorcerer's really powerful spells, and then of course necromancer just beating face very easily. Like
Interesting.
I do think that there's some definite balancing that's going to need to happen before the game, but it's totally natural to happen.
Yeah.
And just like you, I actually tried this on all 3 platforms, believe it or not. I played it on PlayStation mostly last weekend because that's just what I had access to. But then this week I really wanted to try it on PC and Xbox. And again, Xbox, of course, basically on parity with PlayStation. I didn't really expect it to be any different, but it feels and looks pretty much the same there. And on PC,
Mhm.
it actually ran really awesome on PC. I had it maxed out 4K,
Nice.
like 90 to 100 frames a second, basically, were the frame rates I was getting on it. It looked very pretty, but also, Garrett, we talked about this on RPG Cave when talking about Diablo on our Diablo episode. But one of the things I was wondering if they were going to do, if they were going to add controller support for PC, because in Diablo 3 they never added it, so you have to play with mouse and keyboard. And hallelujah, my prayers have been
They added
answered.
it.
They added
Yep.
it with full DualSense support as well, if you have the DualSense.
Wow, that's very nice. That's actually, I wouldn't say it's surprising, but it's a nice, uh,
Yeah.
that's very nice to have for PC players for sure.
Yeah. Well, we
Super
don't
cool.
we don't really get that often from Blizzard PC games because WoW doesn't support a controller. Diablo, again, up until this one, didn't support a controller. Overwatch doesn't support a controller. Like none of the PC versions supported
Yeah.
controllers. So I'm actually glad that that's there because Diablo is the type of game where you don't need that pinpoint accuracy to have fun or to do well. Like you can just play on the controller. Like I like to sit back and just have a good time with Diablo, especially with the amount of clicking you have to do with your mouse in that game too. Like I just don't enjoy that gameplay style all that much for Diablo specifically. So I'm glad the PC version has controller support.
And
Finally.
that's why Steam Deck worked too, as well. It just fully synced with the controller as an Xbox controller with the Steam Deck. It was perfect. Like once I was in game, I had everything set up. It was perfect. And it's really nice to have a couch co-op play and just go run through dungeons and stuff like that. Diablo 4 is probably the perfect game
Yeah.
for Steam Deck if you can get
Yeah.
it
And
running correctly. Yeah.
I'm not going to lie, Garrett. I mean, the Xbox Drive, Sean and I, of course, in the Fantasy
Mhm.
Critic League versus the Trophy Room, those fools over at the Trophy Room, they let us have
Ooh.
Diablo 4, and when we picked it pretty high in the
Wow.
draft, they laughed at us when we picked it.
Really?
I'm feeling way more confident about that pick now than ever before because
Oh my gosh, after playing that, I only really played like, I don't know, maybe 6 hours. It wasn't too much. I was like level 10 or something
yeah,
like that, but I knew this game. Like I knew the motion, I knew the dungeon running, I knew the loot grinding is like it's all there.
yeah.
The building. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yes.
Everything about it seems like this is going to be like a slam dunk,
It's
like, unless like we get some other game that really surprises this year, I wouldn't be surprised if this is like a top 5 game this year. Diablo 4.
I think it's easily top 5 for sure. It's gonna be up there with like, Final Fantasy 16, Tears of the Kingdom. When you go through the Game of the Year nominees, I would not be surprised if this was in the running.
Yeah, definitely.
At least winning one award or something like that.
Because also Resident Evil is in the mix as well, which we'll talk about in a second, which is also getting huge reviews. And then of course, Starfield could really surprise us with reviews, things like that. So, but either way, like I have a really good feeling about Diablo. Like this beta was very strong, and you could definitely tell they were confident with it. Yeah,
definitely. So definitely played some over the weekend. Also, I've been, on my Xbox, I'm trying to get back into it. Fortunately, another awesome Game Pass game just came out a couple weeks back, Soul Hackers 2.
Nice.
So I actually delve in and played a few hours of that, and it's definitely like one of those B-rated Atlas games that I'm really digging. It's just like, okay, can't be writing, going through the battles, this is what I kind of need. It's just like kind of a laid back, let me go through this type of turn-based game, and it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, that's exactly what I remember. We talked about it in the past, and I also mentioned it on a review that I did on the channel a while back, and that's exactly what I said about it, and why I thought it was actually a great game, despite, because I know it got kind of mixed reviews when it came out, because it's not going to knock your socks off or anything like that. Like the writing is not, amazing, and but it's the perfect type of game to just, kick back and relax with and just have a good time. And, especially if you don't take it seriously, I actually think Soul Hackers 2 is actually a pretty good game, despite, its shortcomings. But
I like the art style. I like the animations of it. I like the world building of it. It's just, of course, the writing is kind of the second B, C tier. Of course, the turn-based is just fine. It's the Atlas style game that you're anticipating, and I don't need more than that. Like I can really literally watch a TV show or a YouTube video while I go through this game. It's one of those chill back on the couch or just secondary games. So
it's really also going back to what I talked about before with you. I actually think it's actually a really good starting point for people who have never played an Atlas game before, who want to get into that style of game, but they're daunted by something like Persona 5 because of either the game length or some of the difficulty spikes later in the game. Because I think Soul Hackers 2 is like the right level of difficulty for a new RPG person, and also just is stylish and stylish enough to really hook you.
It's not long. It's not long at all, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can finish in like 15 or 20 hours. Pretty easily.
Yeah.
And the music's really good too. I love the music in that game.
It's like a fifth of Persona 5.
Yeah.
Like, no joke.
No, exactly. That's why I think like it's actually like a very approachable RPG. So I actually think Game Pass is a good place for it. I just hope more people are trying it out, I think.
Yeah. So I think that's pretty much it on my end, bud.
Nice.
What about you?
Well, I got to talk about the game of the week, Garrett. Of course, most people knew that last week was my birthday. And Capcom decided to send me a birthday present, Garrett. The birthday present being, nice. We're going to release Resident Evil 4 on the week of Ryan's birthday. Resident Evil 4 Remake, of course, came out on Friday, and I could not put this game down at all, Garrett. I ended up finishing it late last night at 3 a.m, because, I've said it before on the shows, but I am definitely Carpool Gaming's Resident Evil stan. Me and Nagachaka both represent the Resident Evil standum here at Carpool Gaming, but definitely of the people on staff, I'm definitely like the biggest Resident Evil fan. And I gotta say they hit it out of the park with this one. Like Resident Evil 4 Remake is a masterclass in game design. There are little nitpicky things that I didn't love about it. I'm going to get into that further with a review I'm actually going to be doing later this week, because there's a lot I want to talk about with this game, but I also don't want to take up 20 minutes of a podcast to talk about it with. So I am going to be talking about Resident Evil 4 a lot, but as someone who, liked the original Resident Evil 4 a lot, but didn't love it, I definitely liked this one more than the original, first of all. I definitely think it's a marked improvement. But I still have to ask myself the question after playing it. I'm still mulling on this thought that this game really needed to get remade. Because in a lot of ways, it kind of reminds me of the Dead Space remake in a way where There are a lot of changes to the story and the gameplay that are definitely noticeable in this one. But it's also, of the remake games, it's definitely the closest to the original game, to the point where I almost felt like at times where I really was just playing, what Ryan back in 2004 remembered playing on the GameCube when playing Resident Evil 4 for the first time. So that's kind of the feeling I got from that. So it's kind of like a conflicting opinion that I'm kind of hemming and hawing on at this point. But regardless, honestly, it's probably the best game besides Diablo I've played this year. And if y'all are not, if y'all didn't really like the Resident Evil games before, this is the one that's probably going to get you into it. Because I definitely think it's a great gateway game. Although maybe you might get turned off like I did by the monster closets of, infinitely spawning enemies, which I personally did not love as, a survival horror fan who likes, the approach of the gameplay style from Resident Evil 2 and 3 a little bit more. But it was overall a very, very solid game. And I'm so happy I got to play it. And I'm kind of like chomping at the bit to go back and replay it, because one of the awesome things about Resident Evil 4 is just because you finish the game, that doesn't mean it's over, because there's a ton of stuff to unlock with this game. Because when you beat it, there's another mode, another difficulty mode it unlocks. There's also a ton of outfits for your characters, accessories for your characters. You can also unlock a bunch of different weapons, like infinite ammo weapons, or just stupidly powered weapons, like the infinite rocket launcher. So there's a ton of replay value with this game. And then on top of all that, it's getting the Mercenaries free update next week, which also then brings, another thing to do when the game is over. So this game is packed to the brim with value. Even though it took me, 13 hours to finish the base game on normal difficulty, I could conceivably play this game probably for another 50 hours and not run out of things to do.
Wow.
Yeah.
So. That's crazy. What did you play on? Xbox, PlayStation?
I played it on PC this time, Garrett, because I decided that after playing the Chainsaw demo and seeing just how much better it ran on PC, I was just like, well, this is the time. This is the first kind of AAA game that I played day and date that was on other consoles, but I played it on PC instead because of that. Because I like playing in the console ecosystem, Garrett, a lot. And I don't really like, playing on PC. But I'm also, at a different point in my life where I really am playing games at my desk all the time now that I don't have a TV in my room that works anymore. So I'm playing all my games like PlayStation and Xbox here at this desk anyways. So at that point, it's not that much more of a stretch for me now to play a PC game, especially because, again, I plugged my DualSense in because this game also supports all the DualSense features as well. So I was like,
that's
okay,
nice.
I'm just going to play with the DualSense then, because I do prefer that for Resident Evil games over the Xbox controller, but just because every Resident Evil game I've played on PlayStation. So it just,
of course,
it's hard to break my brain out of, the button prompts being the PlayStation button prompts. So yeah, I really enjoyed it on PC. It ran really solidly. It ran at 120 frames on my PC. I played it at 1440p though. I didn't play it at 4K because I wanted the extra frame rate.
Of course you did.
But it looked gorgeous because I was playing it on ultra settings, and yeah, it looked amazing. So Resident Evil 4, I'm so glad I played it on PC though, because that was definitely, I think, the way to play it. But
Ryan, here's the major question for you now: are you gonna replace the president with Joe Biden in the game?
Maybe I could do that. I saw that was the thing. Yeah. There's all kinds of weird mobs because there's a bunch of mods for the merchant out right now as well. Like the merchant that sells you weapons, dressing him as all kinds of crazy things. I haven't gotten to the modding stuff yet, but now that I am on PC, maybe I can explore
Batman apparently.
Yeah,
I don't know. You can do all sorts of stuff with just the next day I just see mod packets. I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Just all the clips going on.
Just wake me when we get the Thomas the Tank Engine crossover with Resident Evil, because that's always the fun one when Thomas the Tank Engine comes in. But highly recommend Resident Evil 4 if you haven't played it. I mean, there's glowing reviews all over the internet too. You don't need me to tell you that. I mean, it's a high quality game from top to bottom, and I think people should play it.
I'm gonna be honest with you, Ryan. I'm not a huge Resident Evil fan. If you didn't know, I just haven't. I didn't grow up with playing with them at all. I have Resident Evil 2, and I think RE2 remake.
Yeah.
I think one I need to start with, because I hear that one was like the start of like kind of the refresh of the at least for the classic Resident Evil games. Like that one's really good to start with, or I can try with Biohazard.
So the only downside with starting with Resident Evil 1 is it has tank controls. So
yeah, I was saying RE2. Remake.
Oh, RE2. Yeah. RE2 is actually one of the best places to start. And you're going, you're like, for someone who hasn't played these games before, if you're listening, you should start with RE2 before playing with this one. Because the story, because number one, the story is actually pretty good in Resident Evil 4, but you definitely need to have played RE2 because there's a lot of, stuff that crosses over with the story. It's also the game where you play as Leon. Like there's reasons to play Resident Evil 2 before playing Resident Evil 4. So if you have it, definitely play that. And if you don't have Resident Evil 2, it's on sale all the time for $10. So
less than that, like $7. It's insane.
Well, I was using the Canadian dollar metric of $10, Garrett, at that point.
Right. The Canadians.
Yeah.
Keep forgetting.
Oh,
anyways, cool.
And there is one last thing I want to mention about Resident Evil before we move on. There is a reason I also chose not to play this one on Xbox besides what I mentioned. And I did experience this in the demo, which, influenced by buying position. And then I know Digital Foundry did a video about this. But there's actually a problem with the aiming on the Xbox version specifically of Resident Evil 4, where essentially there's no dead zone on the controller. So, which is always fun. It just makes like aiming precise shots very, very difficult and very annoying because the controllers are not, or like way not responsive enough. So, that's
not great.
That did play a little bit into it. So just, buyer beware, kind of wait until that patch is out there if you do plan on picking up this game on Xbox, because I definitely know from playing the demo, it was definitely very noticeable for me anyways, especially when you got the scoped weapons like the rifle with the sniper scope on it. Like, good luck trying to aim that thing with the Xbox controls. So but
interesting.
And then of course, Garrett, because it was such a hit last week, talking about an NES game last week, I have to talk about an NES game I played this week. On this show as well. Because I don't know if you knew this, Garrett, but today was the day that the Wii U and 3DS eShops officially died. And there's actually a game on the Wii U Virtual Console that's an NES game that you can't really play on a modern TV because it's a light gun game, but you can play it on Wii U because, of course, I've got my trusty Wii U gamepad here at my desk here because I was...
Tech price toy.
Yeah.
There it is.
Because I was playing Duck Hunt on the NES. One of the games I grew up with, and one of the first games that I actually ever owned that came with my NES was, of course, the Super Mario Brothers Duck Hunt pack-in cartridge, of course. So I played Duck Hunt a ton with my Zapper. I still have my Zapper. It's in a box over there. But I don't have a CRTV to play that. But what the Nintendo actually did during the Wii U console cycle is, because people had been asking for Duck Hunt for the longest time, they actually released a version of Duck Hunt on Virtual Console that used the Wiimote as the zapper. So you could still play Duck Hunt, which just makes me really sad because now, people will, if they ever want to try out Duck Hunt again, you got to go get a CRT TV because you won't be able to buy that version of the game anymore, which makes me sad.
Yeah. I remember my grandma having the Zapper gun in the NES in that package too. I remember playing that super young. I didn't know you need a CRT TV in order to like have that. Is it like a sensor type of thing? With
yeah. So the way that it works essentially is it has to do with the way that light is projected through the TV, where essentially the end of the zapper is kind of like an IR scope, and it detects when light changes, like the position of the light on the TV to figure out where you're actually shooting. So it won't actually work on a flat screen TV. That's
so smart.
Yeah.
That's crazy innovative at the time. Wow. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Cool.
So we don't actually have, that's one of the reasons why I don't have gun games anymore, Garrett, because you just can't play them nowadays, which makes me sad.
You need an Xbox Connect in order to make that happen now.
Yeah. Or a PlayStation VR 2, because that's actually a genre that's really creeping up on VR 2 because of those controllers. But I wanted to throw that out there because honestly, I spent like 2 hours playing Duck on Friday as kind of like a good palate cleanser for Resident Evil and just had a
Okay.
blast. Like 2 hours just flew by, and I had so much fun playing Duck Hunt that I had to at least mention it. Last week on the show I mentioned Monopoly on NES. This week I mentioned Duck Hunt on NES. What NES game will Ryan mention on next week's show? I guess you'll have to tune in next week and find out.
Guess we'll have to find out. Well, goodbye 3DS and Wii U eShops and your terrible navigation and your endless supply of old Nintendo games. We will miss you.
And don't forget about the TurboGrafx 16 games, Garrett, because those are gone forever now, and it makes me sad. Because it's going from...
You can dig them into a grave.
What? Some of those games are really fun.
Get the electromagnetic information and just put it down in the Arizona desert next to E.T. I'm ready.
I don't know if I can continue to do the show with you. You're besmirching the TurboGrafx 16, which was actually a really good... Bonk's Adventure right there. You got to give me Bonk's Adventure, Garrett. Come on.
I'll give you one game, yes, out of the 10
Yeah.
that was released on TurboGrafx. Yeah.
To be fair, on TurboGrafx 16, it was a lot of space shooters. And if you don't like space shooters, it's not the console for you. But moving on, Garrett, it is time to slam the brakes on this conversation. It is time for some breaking news. And we got a few news stories, believe it or not, because we actually just did the show on Friday. But we actually had a couple news stories that came up over the weekend that we're going to talk about here. So number one, cool. Microsoft is no longer offering your first month of Game Pass for $1. In a statement to Windows Central about this, quote, "We have stopped our previous introductory offer for Xbox Game Pass Ultimate and PC Game Pass, and we are evaluating different marketing promotions for new members in the future." And the reason I wanted to bring this up, Garrett, and why I wanted us to talk about it is because, this has been a mainstay ever since Game Pass released, where, like hop into Game Pass for $1, and then when it eventually expires, you then hop back into Game Pass for $1 again. Like, people really took advantage of being able to pay for Game Pass for $1. But beyond that, it was a great way for people to try out the service. And now they don't really have like a free trial for Game Pass or anything like that. You pretty much just have to commit to it, like you do on PlayStation Plus as well. So I'm really interested to know how this is going to affect, getting new people in the Game Pass. Is it going to affect anything at all? What do you think about this idea, Garrett? And we got, of course, pour one out for, I'd buy that for $1 memes with, of course, Game Pass.
Yeah, this has been going on. Yeah, as you said, ever since Game Pass really started. And it's still unbelievable how long this deal came to be until now. It's been... I would say 6-ish, 7 years now.
2017.
That's an insane amount of time for this type of deal. $1 for 3 months is, I think they just squeezed out as much as they can with this, and they just saw the numbers, and it's no one's grabbing this no matter what we do now with this deal. We'll just cut it off for now because no one's looking at it anymore, and it makes sense because all the people that tried it out and are either subscribing or not, and they went through it that way. So I'm sure they're reevaluating their marketing. They're figuring out what's the next step for Game Pass, of course. And I think for the typical non-consumer that's looking at Game Pass, I'm curious how they would get into it. I know my laptop had a 1 month free Game Pass. I know probably many other electronic products like a laptop or a tablet or anything Windows related. I'm sure they would have a tag along a 1 month subscription. I think they still have a 7-day free trial, if I'm not mistaken. They have some type of free trial, I thought, still.
Yeah, I don't know since this has changed. I don't know
or like a brand new account or something like that. I would... If they're not doing a free trial, at least for a week, that's kind of weird.
Yeah. They stopped putting those in the box as well, because that was one of the things that was always, whenever you bought a new console, there was always like a month of Game Pass in there. Like, in fact, we have a short on the channel where when Sean's trying to reach out to Aaron Greenberg and be like, Aaron, you got to put, Game Pass back in the box with the consoles. Like, people should be just tripping over Game Pass at this point. To use Sean's words to kind of convey this, because this is just... It's just a weird thing to me. So I'm hoping that they do come up with a good, new way of getting people into Game Pass at this point. Because maybe you're right. Maybe they saw the numbers and maybe they saw that this wasn't working anymore. So they tried something different. Or maybe they've got some of the Game Pass people that they almost don't need this type of deal anymore because they know the value's there.
If they had success and if they had the numbers, they would say it.
Yeah.
And they have not been saying it at all, actually. They've been kind of wish-washy, and it's like, oh, it's like this certain type of metric. Here you go. It's kind of successful. It's like, well, and then you heard it from them. It's like we're not meeting our targets that we initially set for Game Pass. So I'm sure they're just kind of renegotiating their strategy with the marketing here. I think they'll have some heavy hitters this year. I don't doubt it, and I think Game Pass is still very the first idea in their mind.
Yeah.
Along with the ecosystem.
Well, even if like all the games that we know about just come out this year and nothing else, like it's already going to be a great year for Game Pass.
I'm really
just
sold.
on top of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
we'll see, for sure.
Yeah. Again, just rest in peace. That meme from RoboCop. I'd buy that for $1. You can't use that anymore when talking about Game Pass, because that was very common for people to use in arguments both for or against Xbox. But moving on. Speaking of things getting shut down, Garrett, this one really surprised me. I don't know why this is a thing. WB have announced that Multiversus is closing its door to its open beta on June 25th and will be unavailable to play until the game's full launch in early 2024. No refunds are being issued at this time for any in-game purchases, and the game will be delisted from stores on April 4th. But you'll be able to still download it. You just can't buy the game or get the game in any way. All purchased content and earned content from the season pass or just from playing will carry over to the full game next year.
Okay.
This is still a weird decision though. Like I haven't seen a beta do this where they're like, all right, we're giving you a paid beta for a year and a half of early access. All right, now we're just going to shut the game off for a year and then not let you play it despite the fact that you paid for it. And then, we'll come back with a full release in a year. Like, I don't understand the mentality here or the rationale. Garrett, am I like, on crazy pills here? What do you think about this? Are you with me on this?
I don't know if any other game company has done this. I mean, I would have to really dig deep to figure out if someone else have deliberately well, like, of course there's beta periods for certain online games, but like having this early access fighting first person or local co-op or whatever kind of game being early release, working out the kinks, and then closing until the full release. I've never seen this before in my life, and I don't understand it because all you're doing is just losing activity. Maybe it's like kind of like a refresh. It's like, hey, we really need to dig in and like invest more time into this, and then we'll come out with a huge bang with a huge update or with the full release and whatever, and then have people more interested and engaged once again. I can see it being like people have kind of just withered out, and then it's like it's really fine to close it down because there's not much people playing now.
But that's not the case with this one. We know the numbers from Steam charts are pretty high on this game still. Like it's a game that's still being played because this just came out last year. It was the winner of the best fighting game at the Game Awards last year. And again, I
didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, and here's the thing, Garrett. You see this kind of thing happen generally with betas that you don't pay for or early, but not early access games. You don't see this with early access games because this was an early access game that you could buy, the starter pack for, or even just buy the game just outright with. Like you could potentially have paid $80 Canadian for this game to get basically the starter edition of the game, and then no longer be able to play it for a year. Like
this is so weird.
Yeah.
This is a very weird decision. I don't know who greenlighted this, but this is not the best move at all for these consumers. Wow.
And don't get me wrong, I think you're right. Like there has to be a good reason why they would do something like this. Like they wouldn't just do this for no reason. So I definitely think that there's some logic behind this move, but because they didn't say what it is, I just don't know what to think about this. Because this has never happened before. This is unprecedented. So it's such a weird thing to think about, which just, again, kind of, makes me wary ever to put money into early access games ever again at this point. Right. Yeah. Like how do you know that, if this happens here with a game this big, who's to say it could happen with any other early access game you put money into? Like Hades 2, we know that that's a big early access game later this year. Like, what if they decide they need to, a bunch of people go out and buy Hades 2, and then 6 months from then they roll back and they're like, you know what, we need to stop selling the game, and we're just gonna pull it off the shelves for a year, just cause. Like,
see, yeah, I don't get the reason right there. I think there will be a lot more backlash to that compared to, I think there's just a lot of other people that's probably not in our gaming crowd that's playing a lot of this game. So I'm curious what they think, that the people that are actually paying for this stuff and going in.
Well, I mean, this was an Evo game last year, so it's just like
so weird.
Yeah, like you can definitely tell like the competitive fighting game communities in it. And I can't see in the chat ask the question, when does it go offline? So it goes offline June 25th. So you have until June 25th to play it. The game is basically not getting any updates between now and then, or any new content or anything like that. It's basically just gonna kind of just turn off on the 25th. Of June, which is bizarre.
Well, I guess you've heard or mentioned about the EA games being delisted too. It's just so weird finding these online, service-ish connected games that are still single player or whatever, but they have to be connected to some server, to some ping, in order to have some maintenance. And then it's like, well, okay, this certain contract's up, and well, I guess we're just going to drop this. Or they have to change something. It's so weird to see these games going up and down all the time for odds and ends that we don't understand as the consumer. So I don't know. That's a huge letdown, actually, for the people that are playing this game.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I saw it all over Twitter today. People like, I'm still playing this pretty competitively. Like, why is this turning off? Like, a lot of that being the sentiment today, or a lot of people just trying to get refunds and they can't, because they put like, some people put like $200 into this game and they can't play it. It's just like, I get it from that perspective, because it's very silly. Which again, just really makes you think about, especially with this news basically coming in the same day as the Wii U and 3DS eShop closed down. It just makes you wonder about how safe are our digital purchases, or how long is, what are the metrics that decide when a game gets delisted like this? Like, it's so weird to see games go out, especially like too with the Mirror's Edge news. Like, that news made no sense, because
that was big.
Apparently they wanted to delist that game because they wanted to turn off the online servers, but like, it's a single player game that you don't need the online for, that you can play completely offline. It doesn't make sense to delist it for that. So it's versus Battlefield. I understand for that reason why you want to do it, but
yeah, I think maybe some of these higher ups don't really understand some of these games, that are just single player only. Like, they can be in somewhere in perpetuity. Like you just cut off the online service. It's a patch, it's an update, or whatever you need to do. You can probably find the resources to, retrofit it however you want. Of course, I understand multiplayer games that loses their community, that, you're gonna have to go to the, so many servers, you're gonna have to go to the next, big multiplayer game in your ecosystem.
Well, at some point, they're going to turn off World of Warcraft one day. They're going to turn off Final Fantasy 14.
So
like, some of these big MMOs, when you think about how big, like how many people are playing those games now, or how integral the multiplayer is to those games, it's just like, I can't even, like, it's going to be weird. Just one day you won't be able to play them at all. So
Can you imagine if Valve just like, hey, we're done?
Yeah. And just like, and then your whole Steam library just blinks out of existence.
Steam library and Steam Deck, dude. Like,
yeah, imagine if Steam actually closed, like, as a marketplace. Like, what if something happened to Valve and they had to close Steam?
Like, isn't that, well? Yeah, imagine if Valve went under. Now, we're not thinking about it now because Valve is great and they're making a lot of money or whatever. It's like, but what if the company went down?
Yeah,
of anything, just anything, the market going down, like, that is just that simple. It's like, we're not indestructible. Our digital libraries are not, like, indestructible at that point. You gotta install, you gotta silo it off into a hard drive or something like that.
Yeah,
at that point. And that's why GOG is very important, because it's a DRM free service. You can download the game, it is in your computer, you don't have to do anything with it. That's yours. So
yeah. Well, first off, Yarden says, stop it, guys. You guys are scaring me. And also, I Can't See says, that gives me a chance to at least try it. I can understand the whole refund thing. I was a day one supporter of Stadia. I'm so sorry, I Can't See. But you know what? I have to credit where credit's due, because Google at least refunded everyone with Stadia when Stadia went under. So, I mean, God forbid, can you imagine if Steam went under and for whatever reason and Valve had to refund everyone like Stadia did?
No, they couldn't refund anyone. They would because the reason why they went down is because they went down too. It's just everyone would lose.
Oh, so it's an Intellivision Amico situation is what you're describing here, where, the company Intellivision went bankrupt. So, all the people who pre-ordered the Amico, it's like, well, it's too bad we used your money to develop the console. So
just be glad that Valve didn't put all of its money in SB Bank, Silicon Valley Bank.
Yeah.
So
also, you can definitely tell I got so heated just mentioning the words Intellivision Amico that I hit my mic just moving my hands there. That's how heated I get about that subject. But anyways, moving on, because I don't want to scare Yarden anymore. I want to move on to happier things. Although we'll zoom through this one because I want to get to listener questions right away. Ubisoft have announced, of course, that they are pulling out of E3 this year, and they will have a Ubisoft Forward live event on June 12th in LA. So this is going to be just the Monday of E3. They're just going to be doing their own thing. So they're not going to be on the show floor or anything like that. They're kind of doing their own thing this year. Yeah.
I think everyone has pulled out. I think E3 is a PAX, and that's fine.
Which is there's nothing wrong with that. And it sounds like there will be places in the area around E3 that you can go to. Like, it sounds like Microsoft's still going to have FanFest this year at the Microsoft Theater, which is like across the street from where EA takes place, where E3 takes place. So it sounds like you'll still be able to go do stuff. But I definitely again, this one hurts me a little bit because I really miss E3, and seeing everyone kind of pull out of it kind of makes me sad a little bit. I know if Sean was here, he'd say the same thing too. But anyways, we're not doing sad things anymore. I promised Jordan we would go to happier things. Let's let some of our friends into the car with it. It is time for the carpool. We're going to start off with a question from Yarden. It says, "Ooh, the doctor is in. What is the best video game remake ever? And why isn't Resident Evil 4? Sorry, Nagachaka, because apparently Yarden beat Nagachaka to the question." So, honestly, before I go to you, because I want to give you some time to think for a second here, Garrett. So, best video game remake ever. I don't actually think Resident Evil 4, in my heart of hearts, if I had to say so right now, Resident Evil 4, I don't think is the best video game remake ever. It's close. It's a good game. It's definitely a game that is better than its original game. But I also think you have to when you're answering this type of question, you have to measure it based on, different metrics. And from me, it actually, the games that I consider the best remakes of all time are the games where they're market improvements over their original releases. To make you never want to go back to the original versions of those games. And I actually think two of the stronger remakes are actually in the Resident Evil camp. Because I actually think one of them is Resident Evil 2, because Resident Evil 2 is one of my all-time favorite games, but it's so hard to go back to the original Resident Evil 2 now because of how good Resident Evil 2 Remake is, where it's so much better than the original game. Yes, it has some enemies that kind of got cut out of that version that are in kind of the original version. You don't fight, spoiler alert for Resident Evil 2 on PlayStation 1, you don't fight the spiders in the sewer anymore. I'm sorry, you don't do it anymore, but I mean, that's okay. I'm okay with that. I'm cool with, them kind of making some creative decisions and kind of making that. So I actually think when you do a pound for pound comparison, I actually think Resident Evil 2 makes a stronger case than Resident Evil 4 for being a better remake because of just how much it improves the experience over the original game. I mean, another one that I can actually think of off the top of my head is Final Fantasy Tactics: The War of the Lions on the PSP. Cutting down load times from the original game, giving you just really impressive artwork and music and visuals. That game just was so much better than the original version, that I actually think it's one of the better remakes out there. Or even just, staying in the realm of Final Fantasy, even Final Fantasy 1 and 2, the remakes that they did of those games on the PSP, miles better than their original versions. And I definitely think games like that are probably where I would consider to be kind of the best video game remakes ever. But I've talked a lot, Garrett. What do you think about this question?
Well, it's a great question. It kind of, tells me that I don't play many remakes of games, especially old games. But I think the one that really hit me is oh, I'm going through this all the way, from beginning to end, and it's Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. you can argue it's a remake or a remaster, whatever. We're talking about just like a refresh. It's like I think it's, you know, way better visually and just, you know, animation wise compared to the original Wii version and then the garbage 3DS version.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's the definitive way to play it. That's one I think of that really stands out. I think another one that really stands out for me that I've played a good chunk of is actually Dark Souls.
Okay.
And it's not a remake per se. It's Dark Souls remastered. But I visually it is very clean. It's still very solid gameplay. You can play that game beginning and it's aged very well. For sure. And that's why they kind of kept the initial template and then just have some refresh skins here and there and make it 60 frames. It plays really nice on Steam Deck, so on and so forth. So it, you know, again, goes to show you I don't play much remakes.
Yeah. Although you were playing one a little while ago, because Yarden points out in the chat, don't forget Live Alive is one as well.
I did.
But I will say the original version of Live Alive with an English translation patch actually holds up pretty well. So it kind of is in the same camp that I would throw a game like Resident Evil 4 into, where I do think the new Live Alive is great, but I also think the original Live Alive is good enough to go back to with the English version of it that you almost don't need to play the remake in a lot of ways. Or it didn't. I don't know if it necessarily, or I personally don't, you know, view it as high of a remake as something like Resident Evil 2, or even a game that I thought of while we were talking as well, which speaking of Nintendo is Wind Waker on Wii U. Wind Waker HD. Like those visuals really pop in a way that the GameCube just couldn't do, combined with the improved controls, the altered quest, Triforce quest at the end. Like that Wii U version of Wind Waker is like the best way to play that game as well. So got to give that a shout out.
The Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask 3DS remakes were very, very good too. Some smart improvements to an already great game. Grezzo did a good job with
those are some really good ones. Oh, you know, last one before we move on. This just popped in my brain when you talked about Ocarina of Time. Also on the 3DS, Metroid Samus Returns. Comparing that to that original Game Boy game, like it ain't even close. Like Samus Returns is so much better than that original game. It's
very, very good,
and it's a very good game as well. So I can't believe I didn't forget. I forgot about that. As the resident Metroid stand, as well as the resident Resident Evil stand here at Carpool Gaming. I can't believe I forgot about Samus Returns. But that's
going full Nintendo on this Xbox.
But they believe it or not, Garrett, they make some of the best remakes. So I mean, we have to give credit where credit's due, because Nintendo does a good job of actually, you know, bringing back some of their old games in a good way. But last question of the week comes to us from I Can't See. If you need a question, you can use this one. I originally posted in the RPG Cave. You can only pre-order one game. What'll it be? Diablo 4 or Tears of the Kingdom? If Diablo 4, what edition or version? These two games come out in the span of a month, give or take. This does pertain to Xbox in a way because of marketing rights, which it totally does. It totally falls into this camp here. But also, we as we just talked about, we of course are not shy from talking about other platforms here. So yeah, I mean, this is a tough one. I mean, it's one of those things where I've budgeted, so I'm gonna make sure I have both games. So yeah, I'm gonna make sure. Like it's just one of those things where I didn't know if I was 100% day one on Diablo 4, because it also, for me, Ryan Turford, also comes out the same day as Final Fantasy 16, which is my most anticipated game of the year. So I didn't know if I was going to get Diablo 4 right away or not. But after that beta, it's like, how could I not at this point? Like I'm kind of just all in. I need to be playing that when it comes out at this point. But yeah, over Zelda, like that's why, like, personally, if I had to choose one, honestly, and I'm gonna probably get some flack for this, but I actually probably would say Diablo 4 over Tears of the Kingdom. Don't get me wrong, Tears of the Kingdom looks great. We're gonna learn a lot more about it tomorrow, so maybe that changes my mind a little bit on it. But I feel like Tears of the Kingdom is like a game that might be so similar to the original game that I might not enjoy it as much as I've enjoyed Diablo 4 at this point. And it might actually end up being lower on my like overall scale at the end of the year than something like Diablo is. So that's why, like, I personally probably am like, definitely, like, if I had to choose, for me personally, it's probably Diablo 4 because that game I'm just much more excited about than Zelda. But Garret, I've talked a lot. What do you think about this?
I think, oh, well, I guess a lot of people may not know me, but I'm not like the biggest Zelda fan in the world. I think they're fine and they're good games. They're great games. I've played Ocarina of Time, Breath of the Wild, Link to the Past. Link to the Past being my favorite out of, well, I played I played the DS games too, but yeah, Link to the Past is my favorite. Breath of the Wild was great. I think, I don't know. I find it pretty overhyped compared to what I've experienced throughout the game. It was good. It was great. It was a great sense of wonder, but it wasn't something too unique for me. I guess like I've played a game like that before. But you know, in the Zelda style, it's very, very nice, very well played, very well put together. So, yeah, it has to be Diablo 4 for me. But I honestly, I don't know if I'll get either of these. I'll definitely not get Diablo 4 day one because I am not gonna be like I'll be out of town
Yeah,
around that time.
that makes sense.
And then Tears of the Kingdom, it's like right before I head out too. It's like, I'm really actually very curious about this gameplay a little bit more. That's coming in gameplay tomorrow morning to see what kind of additional things that they're gonna do with this game. I'm really curious about Tears of the Kingdom. I am. I think right now, because I played Diablo 4 and I'm really into it, I would prefer to play Diablo 4 over Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah.
But I got plenty of other backlog games to go through. Like I would love to play Octopath Traveler 2 actually, you know, sooner rather than later. Like I'm probably after these few games that I'm wrapping up here, including Shining Force, that'll probably be the next one on the docket is Octopath Traveler 2.
Nice.
God,
I'm so excited to actually talk to you about that game because it's going to be great. Because, yeah, Octopath Traveler 2, another strong contender this year. I think it was actually like a really solid game. Definitely one of the best newer games that came out this year for sure.
I've heard.
But yeah, like, and also you have to also consider like the Activision Blizzard deal, you know, might be up in June. Like Diablo won't be a day one Game Pass game, but by this fall, if you wait, it might just end up on Game Pass. So you never know. That might end up being there.
It'd be a very nice E3 moment or an Xbox show moment, but I doubt that they can do anything until, you know, certain things are closed up.
Well, it would be, they would only be able to announce it right away if they had already, signed something before the game came out that it was going to come to Game Pass at some point, right? Like, because we know they have the marketing deal for the game. But so you never know. They might actually surprise us and tell us, yeah, by the way, it's actually coming to Game Pass at some point, this year. I think there's a very real possibility that happens. Yeah.
That would be cool.
In which case you won't have to buy it. Then you have money to buy Street Fighter 4 or Final Fantasy 16 or any of the other games that come around this time.
Good.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
That's why it's just
it looks like Witcher and Final Fantasy just clashed together. It looks so good. Anyways.
Yeah. That's why I really think it's going to be tough, like, to pick any of these games, honestly, because there's going to be like May and June are like the murderer's row of the best games of the year. They're just all kind of coming out in that month and a half span. Like Redfall's also coming out in May, which I'm pretty excited about too.
I'm pretty excited about that one for sure.
Yeah. So I think there's a bunch of different things to consider here. But anyways, Garret, I think that's going to do it for today's show. So first off, I want to say thank you again, Garret, for joining me today and hopping in the car with me.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you jumping on the show with me. And where can people find you on the internet? Especially because we might actually have some audio listeners that don't listen to RPG Cave, so they might not know who you are. Where can people find you on the internet?
You can follow me at Twitter at Bland Explosion. I literally tweet about Steam Deck games recently, like probably a little too much. It's just because I'm really digging into the Steam Deck ecosystem for sure. And you can also find me over in the RPG Cave with Ryan Turford every Monday nights. We talk, very topical, RPG stuff every week, and I have a good old fun time with Ryan, and he sets me on a guided journey to the retro activities, the video games, the backlog adventures, and I'm currently playing Shining Force Don't worry, Ryan.
Yeah.
I am.
You're
I'm going through it.
It's one of those things where next week's episode, we're coming around the time where it's time for me to ask you about it again. So
assignment.
I will be asking you about it on next week's episode. But yeah, if you want more of me and Garret, definitely go listen to the RPG Cave if you like role-playing games. Just because, again, I know on Xbox Drive specifically, we actually have a lot more listeners than any of the other shows for Carpool Gaming. So they might actually not know that the RPG Cave exists. So definitely check that out as well. As for me, you can find me on Twitter at Ryan Turford. You also find us on Twitter at Carpool Gaming, on YouTube at youtube.com/Carpool Gaming, and on podcast services around the globe. So for Garret Bland, I'm Ryan Turford. This has been episode 284 of the Xbox Drive. Only 16 more episodes until episode 300. And we're out.
Cool. Bye-bye.